Do you know that moment where you say something and then suddenly the whole energy of the conversation shifts? You didn't mean to sound harsh, but now they are defensive, quiet, or upset. That's left you thinking, wait, I didn't mean to communicate like that. This episode is not about being more polite. It's about being more clear. Because miscommunication doesn't only lead to arguments, it leads to distance, to resentment, and to disconnection. So if your relationships with your partner, your parents, your friends matters to you, then this episode is for you. My name is Dilan, I'm a psychologist and a coach, and here's something you need to know right now before we even start this episode. People don't hear what you say, they hear what you make them feel. So if your own nervous system is dysregulated, your words probably are too. So let's fix that. If you're still not convinced that this episode is very important to you and you are not sure if you're going to stay and watch or if you're just going to save for later, then listen to this first chapter, okay? Why communication matters more than you think. Of course, everybody, like if you are in therapy or if you even went to counseling once with your partner or something, you know that everybody tells you, okay, the cornerstone of relationships is communication, right? We need to communicate better. But what does that even mean and why? Nobody tells us why it's important. We just have to do these things. So here I am telling you why. Communication isn't just about talking or listening. It's how we express our identity. It's how we share our needs, and it's how we protect our boundaries. So as you can see, all of these things are super important for your relationships. So communication is either the thread that holds your relationships together or quietly rips them apart. There are multiple studies out there proving that communication issues are such a strain on relationships, and here's just a few of them. One of these studies has shown that over 65% of couples name communication issues as their number one reason for divorce. And you can't even see in couples that are unhappy, and there has been longitudinal studies that have followed couples for many, many years and seen why they break up. For example, by the Gottman Institute, I can really recommend them because they have such amazing research on why relationships fail or how relationships can stay healthy. And they have even seen that unhappy couples, even if they're still together, they use communication to eventually end their relationship without meaning to. So you see more criticism, more defensiveness, and all of that stuff in their communication first, which is always a signal for the researchers, for example, oh, this couple is not going to stay together. But how, you might ask? Well, if you are not communicating clearly with each other, for example, if we stay in this relationship thing right now, then you will feel unseen and unheard in the relationship. And that will at first only feel frustrating. Maybe you're angry, maybe you're sad because your partner doesn't see you, doesn't hear the words you're trying to say. Well, in the long run, this will lead you to feel unsafe in the relationship, because if you're not seen and heard, then your brain will automatically think, okay, this is not an environment where I feel safe, that is safe for me. So with the feeling of unsafeness, you will eventually feel unworthy. So all of that leads your brain to understand this is an environment I want to leave, and then eventually the relationship won't work. And that is not only the case with your partner, but also with your friends or your parents or other family members. So communication is always such an important part of all of your relationships. Now in this video, because communication is a two-way street, right? It's about talking and listening. But in this video, we're going to focus on the talking part mostly, because you are the one watching the video right now. You are the one with the ability to change. You cannot ask other people to change. Maybe if it's your partner or somebody very, very close to you, you can sit down with them and talk to them and be like, hey, I would really love this to work. Can we look for changes both of us can make? Then you can ask people to change for you, but in the end, only your actions are the ones you can influence. So let's focus on ourselves in this video and really try to become better at our own communication, so we can prevent those issues or breaking up or losing the friend or the parent in the process. Quick interruption, I just wanted to let you know that I have a few spots open for my one-on-one coaching right now. So if you feel like you want support navigating your own human experience, there's a link in the description for a 15-minute discovery call with me. We meet, we talk, we see if coaching is the right next step for you. Now let's jump right back into the episode. Now let's move on and look at the psychology behind miscommunication, so why we get it wrong. And I have a couple reasons for you. Maybe you can see yourself in one or two of them. Okay, so in the previous episodes, we talked a lot about the brain being a prediction system. So your brain always uses your past experiences, your memories, and your knowledge, your skills, everything that it has stored in its library. It uses all of these informations to then predict what's going to happen next. Because when we are able to predict the future, which sounds made up, but it is just what the brain does, it tries to predict the future, for example, by overthinking. When we are able to predict the future or just simply what's going to happen next, then we feel safe because we know what's going to happen. We know how we are going to experience the next few seconds of this situation. But when our brain is not able to make a prediction, then we start to feel unsafe. And that's where it becomes, where we become anxious. And that our brain doesn't like that, although we can't avoid it, right? Because we don't know what the future holds. So you can always assume your brain works in these prediction shortcuts because that's what the brain thinks is keeping us safe. But how that translates to the situation we have at hand when you're in a conversation with someone is you think you're clear by saying something that you want to say, but there will always be gaps that are being filled by the other person's brain. And the same happens to us. So when we hear somebody talk to us, our brain automatically fills the gaps with stuff from our memory. And there will always be room for interpretation because we're just human. We cannot give the person we're talking to all of the information they need, but we give them just enough so our message goes through, and the rest of the image will be painted by their brain. So just know everything's super subjective, and even if you try to be clear in your communication, if you try, then there will always be just a little bit of wiggle room, which their brain will fill in. So just know it's not always your fault if you're not super, super clear, but it's always a matter of what they interpret into it. We just have to know that. That's why this is my first point. Just remember that your brain will fill the gaps and their brain will do the same. And then factor number 2 is that we always speak from our current emotional state, and our conversation partner will always hear from their emotional state. So conversation is never just logical, rational. There will always be emotions in the room. They don't always have to be overpowering, or if you're feeling calm, there's not going to be anger in your language or something like that, but you always have an emotion, and they will always have an emotion no matter what that is, and that is part of the conversation. So don't forget that. If you feel just a little bit anxious, a little bit frustrated at something, maybe at something completely different, this will be involved in your conversation. And that means that the conversation partner you're talking to will not only pick up on your words, but also the emotional state you bring with you. Just know that we humans, we are empathic beings, so just some are better at this than others, but most of us have like the ability to sense which emotions are in the room, right? So if you're talking to someone and you just know when they have been sad before, or that they are sad right now, or something's bothering them, you will feel it. And that's something you need to consider when you think about why a miscommunication appeared. There's always emotion in the room. And the third factor, if we stay at that emotion topic, is when there's like a high intensity emotion in the room. For example, if you're in an argument, that's not like a conversation anymore, but you're fighting with each other with your words, then just know what's happening here. Because if you and or the other party are very intensely feeling an emotion, for example, anger, frustration, or fear, or any of the other emotions, then this will lead your brain to only work with your emotional system and not with your logical system. I'm showing it like this because your logical center of the brain that is there for your decision making, your rational thinking, puzzle solving and all of that stuff, that's all stored activity in one center, which is behind here, like in the front of your brain, which is why it's called prefrontal cortex. It's right here, and it shuts down when you're very, very emotional. And that's not only for you, but that's for every human being. So your conversation partner in the argument, when they are very, very emotional, you just have to know there's no activity in their prefrontal brain, meaning there's no way they can be rational or logical or calm, because the part of the brain that helps us do these things is shut down for the moment. And that's when emotions are high. So just know, emotions are always in the room, and if it's a high intense, like if the intensity is so high because you are maybe fighting, then neither of you are capable of being rational or calm in the moment. And then we're going to go to the solutions later, how we can fix that. And then a fourth factor, which I don't understand why people don't know this, but here I am telling you this. Most people, they don't listen to you just to listen. They listen to you to be able to respond. So most people in a conversation, and that's completely human, they just wait for their turn. They just wait until there's like a pause in your sentence until they can respond and speak to you. That's just how our nature works. So that means that your brain and your conversation partner's brain, it's always the same. The brain tries to put together a response without even being finished listening. You know, so I mean, you know this about yourself. If you're in the meeting, for example, and you're listening to the people, you're just automatically forming a response already, although you don't have everything you need. You didn't understand what they were saying, but it doesn't matter because the brain just prepares itself. That's also part of the prediction system, trying to keep us safe. It prepares itself to give a response. And because multitasking is not a thing, if you didn't know that, I'm sorry, but there's no such thing as multitasking. You can never do multiple things at once, but your brain can switch very quickly from task to task, which is why the illusion appears that we are multitasking. But that, just a side note, because your brain isn't able to do multiple things at once, the moment you start to prepare your response, you're not able to listen anymore. And you need to know that. So if you talk to somebody, just know it might be the case that they are already preparing their response to you without being finished listening to you. And then the last factor I brought with me today for you to understand why we miscommunicate so much is childhood trauma. And nobody wants to hear this, I know, because we hear it all the time. Everybody talks about childhood trauma and everybody uses it as an excuse, basically. But just know, and I'm not going to talk too much about this, just know that childhood trauma is always saved in your body. And there's nothing you can do about it. It is saved in every bone you have. It's so deeply rooted in you because and everybody has some childhood trauma, right? Some of it is very, very bad and harsh, but some of it is maybe it doesn't appear to be trauma, but it actually is. But just know that when you're talking to somebody you don't know, maybe they had an experience with their parents when they were a child where they were being yelled at, or yelling was a thing in their household, or I don't know, people are just very vulnerable when it comes to talking to each other because it can reveal patterns that they have from their childhood. For example, I can use myself as an example. I get very easily frustrated when people tell me stuff like, that's impossible, or that's not possible. In no way anyone can do that or reach that goal. Just even if they don't mean me. So even if they don't tell me it's impossible, Dilan, it's about just when people say that, it triggers something in me. I don't know. It's because of my childhood, right? Because I've been told a lot of times what I can and cannot do, what I can and cannot achieve. And that is childhood trauma, I guess. I'm not labeling it like that, but just for the purpose here. And just know, people have that stuff. They have their own luggage and they bring it to every conversation. So if somebody reacts differently than what you thought was a normal reaction, you never know what has happened in their past. And there's always an explanation for why people behave the way they behave. Now that we know why miscommunication happens all the time, and those were just a few factors. There are multiple more that we don't even have the time to touch on. Just know miscommunication is normal, it happens to everybody. And now let's look at some stuff you can actually do, some practices I want you to do in your spare time if you want to become someone who is better at communicating. Here are 4 things, the 4 R's that I use when I practice my communication skills. Number 1 is realign. And it only means to just create a little bit of space between your emotion, which you will always have an emotion, between your emotion and then your expression. So we just want to create a little bit of space between emotion and expression, and what happens in between is realignment. So you pause, you create space before you talk, and then realign by asking yourself, what am I actually trying to express here? Just be aware of what your message is. Do you want to express a need? Do you want to share a boundary? Do you want to just share a thought? Do you want to ask a question? Do you want to express an emotion? What is it exactly that you want to do? Why am I saying this as the first step? Realignment. Because honestly, just because of from my experience, I did this whole script here just to help myself, and I'm just sharing it with you because I know it helped for me. So maybe there's someone out there who experiences life similarly to me, so this will help you. For me, I always had a struggle with rambling because I like talking, but I never ever was able to hit the spot. I was talking in school. I was talking so much, nobody could stop me, and I would never ever be concise in my message. Sometimes people won't even get my message because there was so much fluff around it, right? So I had to learn to realign myself before talking, create that space, and think about, what am I trying to express here? What is my message? And when I allow myself that little bit of time, then it helped me to become more clear in my conversations, in whatever, even in my YouTube videos, in everything I do where talking is involved, in my coaching. It just helped me a lot. So I really recommend to you, allow yourself to create that space to realign with what you actually wanted to say. And if you're scared because that happens a lot, right? If you create some space, people are gonna take advantage and just talk themselves, right? They just take the talking, they take the mic and talk themselves. Although you wanted to talk, but you just wanted to have some space. So what you can do is you can always say, give me a second to think about it. Space. Think about what you're going to say, and then say it. So you can add a cue, add a phrase, add a sentence, whatever, or just ask for permission to just think about it for 1 second or 1 minute even. So just ask for space and then create the space, realign, and then talk. I promise you it will make your conversation so much better, because I always used to feel rushed, and I'm not going to blame my brother for this here. I mean, he watches my YouTube videos, so he knows. I'm not going to blame him for this, but I had a brother, right? I have a brother, and when you have siblings, and then sometimes as children, there's not enough room for everybody to talk. And me and my brother, we are very, very fast talkers, and I always used to interrupt him, and I was a very bad sister. Well, when you're raised with siblings, I'm not sure if anybody can relate to this, but sometimes everybody wants to talk, and there's not enough room for both of them to talk, so it just ends up being interruptions all the time, and you just get faster and faster and faster. And that was us. So I really took advantage of any type of space there was. So if there was a moment where he was thinking, I would be talking. If there was a moment where I was thinking, he would be talking. And so I just learned that people are going to take away my space if I allow myself to have some. But then I had to unlearn that, because not everybody does that, and there are people out there who respect your space and who respect you for taking up space and time to think instead of wasting their time later when you're rambling. So actually, I feel like when somebody says to me, just give me a minute to think about this, when somebody said that to me, I feel respected because they take time to think about what they're going to say to me. So they value my time, which I love. So yeah, that's just a little side story why you should realign. Let's move on to number 2, which is reframe. And reframing only means taking something and reinterpreting it into something new. So in a conversation, whenever you feel like you have a judgmental thought, for example, you're talking to somebody and you think to yourself, wow, they are so selfish. It happens. We have these thoughts. Take a moment to then reframe that thought into something that concerns yourself. So that helps because you just are less judgmental. And why is it good to be less judgmental? Because your brain will use the judgment you pass onto everybody else to then form these patterns that I talked about earlier. So the brain stores the information that we think they are selfish, and the next time we talk to them, it will use that information, and our conversation is going to be different. So instead of teaching your brain to pass judgment on other people, teach your brain to just look at itself for a second. So whenever you feel like you have a judgmental thought about someone in your head, which is totally normal, then try to reframe it into an I statement. For example, I don't feel seen enough in this conversation. You see where this matches. If you feel like somebody's selfish, for example, for taking up so much talking time and not asking me a single question in the process, that could be seen as selfish or ego-centered, call it whatever you want. And then reframe oh my God, they are so selfish and ego-centered. Reframe that into, I don't feel seen. So it's my task to make clear that I feel the need to be more seen, right? Because how will they know that your need is not met if you don't tell them? So the reframe part here is about teaching your brain to look at itself, to look inside first, to see which needs are not met, which boundaries are crossed. And then this insight about yourself will help you communicate better, communicate more clear, and make sure that you feel seen in the conversation. So the next time you're talking to that person, be like, hey, I know these conversations are hard, but they are important. I didn't feel quite seen last time we talked, so maybe, I don't know, or just ask them why, or I'm struggling here. Just ask them, do you know maybe why that happened, or can we talk about it? Because I'm not sure, I didn't feel like you asked me questions at all, so I just was wondering, were you not interested in what I was going to say, or were you just caught up in your own thing, and how can we make that better for next time? It's okay to have these conversations. It's okay to just tell people what your need is, because in the long term, when you communicate your needs and boundaries, it will be easier for you and the other person to have better communication. It will save your relationship. And then the third R in my framework here is called repeat. So what we're going to do is we're going to mirror. And you probably have heard of this mirroring thing, that we should, for example, mirror body language when talking to somebody because it makes them feel seen, or whatever the reason is. This part here is about mirroring just their words, and not by repeating them like exactly, but by just listening to the person, repeating what you understood in your own words. So if somebody were to tell me about their struggles they have, I don't know, at school, something, I would repeat something that, and I'm not giving you like a textbook example or template you could use. Be human. Literally say what you mean. So I would be saying something like, okay, wait, so just, do I understand it correctly? You have struggles with this and that because of this and that, just to make sure I got it right, because I want to like understand you. I know this can be weird at first because we never do that automatically, but trust me, this is going to bring so much respect into the room, into the conversation. The people you're talking to will be so thankful for you doing that, because they get the feeling you listen to them. Just imagine it the other way around. When you tell somebody something about yourself and you're talking and talking, so emotional about it, and then they repeat back what they heard to make sure they understand, that is like the best gift there is, because it means they listened, and, which is part one, they listened, which is amazing. And then part two, they didn't only listen, but they're trying to understand, which is insane to me. So please do that in your conversations. Repeat back what you hear. make sure you understand, because as I told you before, miscommunication happens because we don't listen to understand, we listen to prepare a response. And if your friend, for example, tells you about their issues, their problems right now, your task as a friend is not to respond, it is to listen and to understand. And only then are you able to give a response if needed even. Sometimes friends just come to us to rant, to talk, to yap, and not to get advice. So start making your relationships more trusting by just repeating back what you hear. And it's so easy as well, because you train your focus. You try to focus on what the other person is going to say. And then this will make you a more trustworthy person, and more like just someone who can listen, which there are so few of them out there. So become one of us. And then the last practice, and I feel like it's the hardest one that I want to give you today, is to refine. That's something I struggled with a lot because, as I told you, I used to talk a lot without setting like periods. So I started to learn how to refine, which is just saying what you mean to say in one sentence, and that's it. No further explanations, no further context, no further anything, just one sentence and just leave it be. This is especially helpful when trying to say no to something. So if somebody asks you for advice, or so if somebody asks you for anything that you don't want to do, instead of being like, well, I would love to help you out Saturday, but unfortunately I can't because blah, blah, blah. And then you tell them your life story and they just ask you for help. So just practice refinement and say, oh, sorry, no, I'm not available at that time. That's it. Don't say more. Don't give more context, because it's not about you. It's not about your life story. It's not about your reasons, your excuses you're making up along the way. It's about just giving them an answer they want to hear, yes or no. It's that simple. I hate it when I ask people questions and they go on and on talking about why. That's not necessary. I asked you a question, just reply to me in a short sentence. That's all I need. Not all the time, of course. You shouldn't be like concise all the time, but I feel like you know which situations need more refinement. Or another example, if you're in an argument, right, and you feel like, oh, this is getting heated, our logical prefrontal cortex centers are shutting down, both of us, so this is not going to go anywhere until they have woken up from the nap, then just say something like, let's talk about this when we're both more calm. Period. Because in situations where the air is just heated and you know it's going to explode any minute, because none of us here are logical or rational about it, we're just pure emotional about it, then just try to refine what you were going to say and just pause the conversation until you feel more calm. Just take a lap, do something else, do something fun for a second, eat something, sleep, or anything, just to give yourself, your brain, a chance to wake up that logical center so you can have a normal conversation again. And then lastly, what always helps is just to say, I need some time to think about this. I need some time to think about an answer. Period. So just try to refine your answers if it's fitting to the situation. As you can see with these 4 practices, I'm trying to tell you that communication is like a muscle. You can train it, you can practice it, and it's your job to do that. It's not the job of other people to listen to you. It's not the job of other people to hear you, to understand you. No. It's your job to make yourself clear and to be a good communication partner yourself. Because only then you can either teach other people to do the same, or just they will learn from you by watching you. And this is when all of our problems will be dissolved, because communication or miscommunication is such a huge part of all of our problems. So just do these things, and I promise you will see such a change in the conversations you have with anyone. Okay, I hope this has helped you a little bit, and just use these little practices. There are so many ways to improve your communication. You can start by looking up more words you can use, because sometimes miscommunication happens when we don't have the right words for it, or You can use self-regulation techniques that we have not mentioned here in detail just to get yourself in a calm state of mind so you can speak clearly. There's so many ways you can approach communication, but I've decided to keep it short in this video to give you a few exercises you can do that have helped me and my clients. So just let me know if that has helped, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.